Marcus had always been the black sheep of the Henderson family, though he never understood why. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, he watched his younger brother Tyler receive constant praise while his own achievements went unnoticed. When Marcus graduated summa cum laude from Stanford with a degree in finance, his mother Linda barely acknowledged it. When Tyler barely scraped through community college, she threw him a celebration party that lasted 3 days. The pattern continued into adulthood. Marcus built a successful investment firm from the ground up, working 18-hour days and sacrificing personal relationships to prove himself worthy of his family's respect. Tyler bounced between jobs, living in their childhood bedroom until he was 32, yet somehow remained the golden child in Linda's eyes. Every family gathering became an exercise in subtle humiliation for Marcus, with Linda finding ways to diminish his accomplishments while elevating Tyler's mediocre efforts. The breaking point came when Marcus's father Robert passed away suddenly from a heart attack. In his grief, Marcus discovered that his father had left him something unexpected in the will: the family's vacation home in Lake Tahoe. The stunning lakefront property, purchased decades earlier for a fraction of its current value, was now worth over $2 million. Robert had quietly updated his will just months before his death, leaving the house specifically to Marcus with a handwritten note: "For my son who never gave up, even when others didn't believe in him." Linda was furious when the will was read. She had assumed the house would go to Tyler, who had always been Robert's fishing buddy during their annual trips. The revelation that Robert had chosen Marcus instead sent shockwaves through the family dynamic. Linda contested the will briefly, but Robert's lawyer assured Marcus that the documentation was ironclad. The house was legally his, along with all the memories and responsibilities that came with it. Marcus decided to honor his father's memory by maintaining the property exactly as Robert had left it. He hired a local caretaker, paid for regular maintenance, and even stocked the fishing gear his father had loved. The house became his sanctuary, a place where he could feel connected to the one family member who had truly understood him. He invited Linda and Tyler to visit whenever they wanted, hoping this generous gesture might finally bridge the gap between them. For the first year after Robert's death, the arrangement worked well. Linda would spend weeks at the house during summer, and Tyler would bring his friends for weekend fishing trips. Marcus rarely used the property himself, too busy with work, but he found peace knowing his family was creating new memories there. He even paid for renovations to update the kitchen and bathrooms, spending nearly $50,000 to ensure everyone's comfort during their stays. The house represented more than just real estate to Marcus. It was proof that his father had seen his worth, had recognized his dedication and character. Every time he drove up the winding mountain road to the property, he felt Robert's presence and approval. The financial value was secondary to the emotional significance, though Marcus was well aware that the property had become one of the most valuable assets in the family estate. Marcus believed that sharing the house with his mother and brother would finally demonstrate his commitment to family unity. He had no idea that his generosity was about to be exploited in the most hurtful way possible. Tyler had been secretly resentful of Marcus's inheritance from the moment the will was read. Despite never showing much interest in the family business or demonstrating any financial responsibility, Tyler believed he deserved the house more than his older brother. He began planting seeds of doubt in Linda's mind, suggesting that Marcus was being controlling about the property and didn't truly understand its sentimental value to the family. Linda, still grieving Robert's death and frustrated by her reduced influence over family decisions, became increasingly receptive to Tyler's manipulations. She started to view Marcus's ownership of the house as a symbol of everything wrong with their family dynamic. In her mind, Marcus had always been too ambitious, too focused on money and success, while Tyler represented the family values she held dear. The conspiracy between mother and son began innocently enough. Tyler suggested they should plan a special family reunion at the house to honor Robert's memory. Linda loved the idea, imagining a gathering that would bring together all of Robert's siblings, cousins, and old friends. They began making plans in secret, wanting to surprise Marcus with their thoughtful tribute to his father. However, as the planning progressed, Linda and Tyler's true motivations became clearer. They weren't just organizing a memorial gathering. They were orchestrating a deliberate exclusion of Marcus from what they considered their family event. Tyler convinced Linda that Marcus would try to control every aspect of the reunion, turning it into a networking opportunity for his business rather than a genuine celebration of Robert's life. Linda's grief had clouded her judgment, making her vulnerable to Tyler's manipulations. She agreed that they should handle all the arrangements themselves, without involving Marcus in the planning process. What started as a surprise became a deliberate snub, though Linda told herself they were protecting the integrity of the event from Marcus's alleged controlling tendencies. Tyler took charge of the logistics, contacting relatives and family friends to invite them to the reunion. He presented himself as the primary organizer, casually mentioning that Marcus was too busy with work to be involved in the planning. He didn't explicitly tell people that Marcus wouldn't be attending, but he created an atmosphere where Marcus's absence would seem natural and expected. The guest list grew to include over 40 people, including Robert's 3 brothers, several cousins, old fishing buddies, and family friends from decades past. Tyler arranged for catering, rented additional furniture, and even hired a photographer to document the event. He spent weeks coordinating schedules and managing RSVPs, reveling in the role of family patriarch that he had always craved. Linda threw herself into the preparation with an enthusiasm she hadn't shown since Robert's death. She organized photo displays, gathered Robert's favorite recipes to share with the caterer, and personally called each guest to ensure they understood the significance of the gathering. The reunion gave her a sense of purpose and control during a difficult time, though she was blind to the cruelty of excluding Marcus from the planning. Neither Linda nor Tyler considered how their secrecy would affect Marcus, or how their actions might violate the trust he had placed in them by sharing the house freely. They justified their behavior by convincing themselves that Marcus wouldn't really want to attend such a sentimental gathering anyway, preferring his corporate world to messy family emotions. Marcus first learned about the reunion through a casual conversation with his cousin David, who mentioned how excited he was about the upcoming gathering at the Lake Tahoe house. David assumed Marcus was one of the organizers and began discussing travel arrangements and accommodation details. The conversation left Marcus confused and slightly hurt, wondering why he hadn't been informed about plans for his own property. When Marcus called his mother to ask about the reunion, Linda's response was evasive and defensive. She claimed they had wanted to handle everything themselves to avoid burdening him with additional responsibilities. She suggested that his busy work schedule made it unlikely he could fully participate anyway, so they had decided to manage the arrangements independently. The conversation revealed the depth of the deception. Linda and Tyler had been planning the event for months, booking catering, coordinating with dozens of relatives, and making extensive use of the house without ever consulting Marcus. They had essentially taken over his property and turned it into their personal event venue, treating him like an unwelcome outsider in his own family. Marcus felt a crushing sense of betrayal that went far beyond simple hurt feelings. This wasn't just about being excluded from a party. It was about his mother and brother's fundamental disrespect for his ownership of the property and his place in the family. They had violated his trust, exploited his generosity, and demonstrated that they viewed him as an obstacle to their vision of family unity. The timing of the discovery made everything worse. The reunion was scheduled for the following weekend, meaning Marcus had only days to process the betrayal and decide how to respond. He could confront them directly, demand to be included in the final preparations, or simply show up uninvited to his own property. None of these options felt satisfying or appropriate. Marcus spent sleepless nights wrestling with his emotions and considering his options. Part of him wanted to believe that his mother and brother had simply made a thoughtless mistake, that they would apologize and welcome him back into the planning once they realized how hurtful their actions had been. Another part of him recognized that this exclusion was deliberate and calculated, representing years of accumulated resentment and disrespect. The more Marcus thought about the situation, the more he realized that this reunion represented everything wrong with his family relationships. Despite owning the house, paying for its maintenance, and generously sharing it with his relatives, he was still treated as an outsider. His mother and brother felt entitled to use his property for their own purposes while simultaneously excluding him from the very event they were hosting there. Marcus began to understand that his generosity had been interpreted as weakness, his attempts at family reconciliation seen as opportunities for exploitation. Linda and Tyler had never respected his ownership of the house. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to assert their own vision of how the property should be used. The reunion was their declaration of independence from Marcus's authority, their attempt to reclaim what they believed should have been theirs from the beginning. The revelation transformed Marcus's understanding of his place in the family hierarchy. He had spent years trying to earn his mother's approval and his brother's respect, sacrificing his own needs and desires in pursuit of family harmony. The reunion planning showed him that his efforts had been not only unsuccessful, but actively counterproductive, enabling behavior that diminished his dignity and status. Marcus realized that continuing to tolerate this treatment would only encourage more of the same. If he allowed his mother and brother to exclude him from events at his own property, he would be setting a precedent that would define their relationship for years to come. The house would become their venue, and he would become an unwelcome guest in his own inheritance. The weekend of the reunion arrived with Marcus still undecided about how to respond. He drove to the house early Saturday morning, not to crash the party, but to see for himself what Linda and Tyler had created with his property. What he found exceeded his worst expectations, and finally crystallized his resolve to take definitive action. The house had been transformed into a festival venue, with rental tents covering the lawn, professional catering stations set up in the kitchen, and an elaborate sound system installed on the deck. Dozens of cars filled the driveway and lined the access road, creating a traffic jam that blocked neighboring properties. The quiet, respectful atmosphere Marcus had tried to maintain had been replaced by a boisterous celebration that ignored the house's residential setting. Tyler was holding court on the deck, regaling relatives with stories about the house and its history as if he were the owner. He had positioned himself as the family patriarch, the keeper of Robert's legacy, and the natural steward of the property. When Marcus appeared, Tyler's expression shifted from jovial host to defensive intruder, making it clear that Marcus's presence was unwelcome at his own property. Linda's reaction was even more painful. Instead of acknowledging her mistake or attempting to include Marcus in the festivities, she treated him like a party crasher who was disrupting her carefully planned event. She suggested that he should have called ahead to avoid misunderstandings, and made it clear that his presence was creating awkwardness for the other guests. The relatives' reactions revealed how effectively Tyler had managed the narrative. Many of them seemed genuinely surprised to see Marcus, having been led to believe that he was too busy or uninterested to attend. Some appeared uncomfortable with the obvious family tension, while others had clearly been influenced by Tyler's version of events and viewed Marcus as the problematic family member who couldn't appreciate simple family gatherings. Marcus spent less than an hour at the reunion, but that time was sufficient to understand the complete scope of his mother and brother's betrayal. They hadn't just excluded him from planning. They had actively undermined his relationship with extended family members and positioned themselves as the true inheritors of Robert's legacy. The reunion was their coronation as the family leaders, with Marcus cast as the absent, disconnected son who had lost touch with his roots. The final straw came when Marcus overheard Tyler telling their Uncle James that he was considering moving into the house permanently to serve as its caretaker. Tyler suggested that Marcus was too busy with his career to properly maintain the property, and that it needed someone who could truly appreciate its family significance. The comment revealed Tyler's ultimate goal, not just to exclude Marcus from family events, but to claim ownership of the house itself. Marcus left the reunion without confronting anyone directly, but his mind was already working on a response that would match the magnitude of their betrayal. As he drove down the mountain road, he began formulating a plan that would demonstrate the consequences of treating him as an outsider in his own family. The Monday after the reunion, Marcus called his real estate agent and scheduled an appointment to discuss selling the Lake Tahoe house. The decision wasn't made in anger or spite, but from a clear understanding that his relationship with his mother and brother had fundamentally changed. They had shown him that they would never respect his ownership or include him as an equal family member, so maintaining the property for their benefit no longer made sense. Marcus's real estate agent, Patricia Williams, was initially surprised by his decision to sell such a valuable property in a premium location. The Lake Tahoe market was extremely strong, with waterfront properties like Marcus's commanding premium prices from wealthy buyers seeking exclusive retreat locations. Patricia estimated that the house could sell for between $2.1 and $2.3 million, representing a substantial profit from Robert's original investment decades earlier. The selling process moved quickly due to the property's desirable location and excellent condition. Patricia arranged for professional photography, created a comprehensive marketing package, and listed the house on multiple platforms targeting luxury property buyers. Within days, they had received several serious inquiries from potential purchasers, including tech executives, retired executives, and investment groups. Marcus kept the listing secret from his family, wanting to maintain the element of surprise that would maximize the impact of his decision. He knew that once Linda and Tyler learned about the sale, they would attempt to interfere or convince him to change his mind. By keeping the process confidential, he could ensure that the transaction would be completed before they had any opportunity to sabotage his plans. The first open house attracted over 20 potential buyers, creating a competitive atmosphere that drove up the property's perceived value. Marcus watched from a distance as wealthy strangers toured the house that had been his family's retreat for decades, evaluating its commercial potential rather than its sentimental significance. The contrast between their businesslike assessment and his family's emotional attachment highlighted the fundamental difference in how he and his relatives viewed the property. Within 2 weeks, Marcus received 3 serious offers, each exceeding Patricia's initial estimate. The highest bid came from a Silicon Valley entrepreneur who wanted to use the house as a weekend retreat for his executive team. The buyer offered $2.15 million cash, with a 30-day closing period and minimal contingencies. Marcus accepted the offer immediately, knowing that the quick sale would prevent any family interference. The legal paperwork moved smoothly, with Marcus's attorney handling all the documentation and ensuring that the sale would be legally binding. Marcus felt a mixture of sadness and relief as he signed the documents transferring ownership of his father's beloved house to a complete stranger. The property had represented his connection to Robert's memory, but it had also become a symbol of his family's rejection and manipulation. Marcus planned to inform his mother and brother about the sale only after the closing was complete and the transaction was irreversible. He wanted them to understand that their actions had consequences, that excluding him from family decisions meant losing access to family resources. The house sale would serve as a permanent reminder that respect and inclusion were prerequisites for his generosity. The closing took place on a Friday morning in Patricia's office, with Marcus signing the final documents and receiving a certified check for the full purchase amount. The Silicon Valley buyer was efficient and professional, treating the transaction as just another real estate investment rather than the end of a family legacy. Marcus appreciated the buyer's businesslike approach, which helped him maintain emotional distance from the sale's personal implications. As Marcus walked out of the closing with a check for over $2 million, he felt a sense of finality that was both liberating and melancholy. He had severed his last significant connection to his childhood family, but he had also freed himself from the cycle of manipulation and disrespect that had defined those relationships. The money would provide him with new opportunities and independence, even as it marked the end of his role as the family's provider and peacemaker. That evening, Marcus called his mother to inform her about the completed sale. Linda's initial reaction was disbelief, followed by anger, and finally by desperate attempts to convince him to reverse the decision. She claimed that he was destroying the family's heritage, that Robert would be devastated by his choice, and that Tyler had been counting on the house for his future security. Marcus listened to his mother's protests without interruption, then calmly explained his reasoning. He detailed how the reunion had demonstrated their lack of respect for his ownership, their willingness to exclude him from family decisions, and their apparent belief that they were entitled to use his property without his input. He emphasized that the sale was not revenge, but a logical response to their treatment of him as an outsider. Linda's attempts to minimize the significance of the reunion exclusion only reinforced Marcus's decision. She claimed that they had been trying to surprise him, that they never intended to hurt his feelings, and that he was overreacting to a simple miscommunication. Her refusal to acknowledge the deliberate nature of their actions showed Marcus that she still didn't understand the gravity of what they had done. Tyler's reaction was even more dramatic when he learned about the sale. He called Marcus repeatedly, alternating between angry accusations and desperate pleas for reconsideration. Tyler claimed that Marcus was being vindictive, that he was punishing the entire family for a minor oversight, and that the sale would damage relationships with extended relatives who had enjoyed using the house. Marcus remained calm during these conversations, refusing to be drawn into emotional arguments or guilt-based manipulation. He explained that Tyler's behavior at the reunion, particularly his comments about moving into the house permanently, had revealed his true intentions. The sale simply prevented Tyler from eventually claiming ownership through occupation and emotional manipulation. The news of the sale spread quickly through the extended family, creating divided reactions among relatives who had attended the reunion. Some family members understood Marcus's position and admitted they had felt uncomfortable with his obvious exclusion from the event planning. Others sided with Linda and Tyler, viewing Marcus as petty and destructive for selling a property that had meant so much to Robert. Marcus found these reactions illuminating, as they revealed which family members truly understood the principles of respect and fairness versus those who prioritized family harmony over individual rights. The relatives who supported his decision became closer allies, while those who criticized him demonstrated that they shared Linda and Tyler's sense of entitlement to his generosity. The aftermath of the sale forced Marcus to rebuild his understanding of family relationships from the ground up. He realized that blood relationships didn't automatically create mutual respect or consideration, and that his attempts to maintain family unity through financial generosity had actually enabled toxic behavior. The house sale marked his transition from family peacemaker to independent adult who demanded equal treatment. Marcus used part of the proceeds from the house sale to purchase a smaller vacation property in Colorado, which he kept strictly private and didn't share with family members. The new house became his personal retreat, free from the complicated emotional history and family expectations that had surrounded the Lake Tahoe property. He found that he enjoyed the solitude and independence more than he had ever enjoyed the forced family gatherings. The remaining money from the sale was invested in Marcus's business and personal retirement accounts, providing him with financial security and independence that reduced his need for family approval or support. He realized that much of his previous desire for family acceptance had stemmed from a fear of being alone, but the house sale had shown him that he was perfectly capable of creating his own happiness and success. Linda and Tyler eventually stopped their attempts to convince Marcus to buy back the house or find a similar property for family use. They seemed to finally understand that their actions had permanently changed their relationship with him, though they never explicitly apologized or acknowledged their mistakes. The family dynamics shifted to a more distant but honest arrangement, with Marcus participating in major family events but maintaining clear boundaries about his generosity and involvement. Years later, Marcus occasionally drove past the old family house when visiting the Lake Tahoe area for business. The new owners had made several improvements and clearly loved the property, which gave him satisfaction knowing that it was being appreciated and maintained. He felt no regret about the sale, understanding that it had been necessary to establish his independence and self-respect. The reunion that was meant to exclude Marcus ultimately freed him from a dysfunctional family dynamic that had limited his happiness for decades. By selling the house, he had demonstrated that respect and inclusion were non-negotiable requirements for his generosity, and that he would no longer tolerate being treated as a second-class family member. The $2 million sale price was less important than the dignity and independence it represented. Marcus's story became a cautionary tale about the importance of setting boundaries with family members, even when doing so requires difficult decisions and permanent changes. He learned that true family relationships are built on mutual respect and consideration, not on financial generosity or unconditional tolerance of poor treatment. The house sale marked the beginning of his journey toward healthier relationships and greater personal satisfaction. The experience taught Marcus that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for dysfunctional family members is to stop enabling their poor behavior, even if that means losing relationships that have defined your identity for decades. By refusing to continue being taken advantage of, he created space for more authentic connections based on genuine respect and affection, rather than obligation and manipulation. Today, Marcus maintains cordial but limited relationships with his mother and brother, participating in major family events, but no longer serving as the family's financial benefactor or emotional caretaker. He has built a chosen family of friends and colleagues who appreciate his generosity and treat him with the respect he deserves. The sale of the Lake Tahoe house, while painful at the time, ultimately freed him to create the life and relationships he had always wanted, but had been afraid to pursue.